So many residents from New Jersey reached out to me and said, hey, we have the same thing going on here in Lakewood, New Jersey and surrounding towns. Please come here and take a look. So Lakewood, I think, is the most populous Jewish town besides Brooklyn, New York, in the United States. Massive Orthodox Jewish community. And many of the towns have been turned over, so to speak. Non-Jewish towns have become predominantly Jewish towns in the last 2 decades, from my understanding, in the early 2000s especially. And it has been perpetrated through pretty aggressive methods, so to speak.
Really?
Yeah. So we're talking about the consolidation of political dominance from the township board to the planning board to the zoning board to the school board. And the heritage residents in these areas, their argument is they've made it so uncomfortable for us that we've either left if we've had the means to leave financially.
A striking part of Tyler Oliveira's argument is his description of heritage residents, whom he specifically identifies as working-class poor people, being pillaged by the incoming Orthodox community. This framing is a classic rhetorical device. It pits 2 minority or marginalized groups against each other to create a villain versus victim dynamic. While the friction between longtime residents and a rapidly growing new community is a documented social phenomenon, the way Tyler Oliveira presents it to Tucker Carlson simplifies a massive economic issue into a moralistic one. By focusing on the unreasonable neighbors narrative, the interview avoids the harder questions about New Jersey's tax laws or the systemic failures of state-level school funding formulas. Instead, it leans into identity-based grievances, which serves to provoke emotional outrage from the audience, rather than providing a map for a policy-based solution.
And those who are left behind send their kids to a dismantled, diluted, and pillaged public school system that's been destroyed inadvertently by the presence of these Orthodox Jews.
Well, how has it destroyed this school system?
So, in New Jersey, the state funding formula for schools is a derivative of public school attendance, okay? So if I had 5,000 public school attendees, that would be multiplied by X to determine the amount of money my school gets. So what happens is when Orthodox Jewish communities come in, they overwhelm these school districts with Jewish students who go to yeshivas, right? They do not attend the public school system. Yet simultaneously, those schools have an obligation to fund private transportation, special education for these private schools. So what ends up happening is a large piece of the pie ends up getting allocated towards these private schools in the form of gender segregated busing and exorbitant costs for special education within the Jewish community.
Wait, the state pays for gender segregation?
Gender segregated busing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The state pays for that?
Correct. So that's state funded.
You can't even get states to have gender segregated bathrooms, but they're paying for gender segregated busing?
Sure. Because they argue it's a violation of their freedom to religiously express themselves. And yeah. So there's gender segregated busing at play.
What
here.
about Title IX? There's no federal law. Well, that's amazing.
Sure.
Throughout the segment, Tucker Carlson expresses shock at the idea of gender-segregated busing being funded by the state. He uses this to highlight what he sees as government hypocrisy, asking how a state can enforce gender-neutral bathrooms while paying for gender-segregated buses. While this makes for great television, it's a bit of a straw man argument. The criticism here is that Tucker Carlson is using the Orthodox community as a prop to attack his favorite target, the inconsistent liberal government. He doesn't actually dive into the First Amendment or the specific religious freedom laws that allow these exemptions to exist. By focusing on the absurdity of the busing, Tucker Carlson and Tyler Oliveira sidestep the actual legal complexities of the Establishment Clause. They chose to focus on the most outrageous detail to reinforce a broader narrative that the government is failing everyone, rather than exploring how these communities are successfully navigating and sometimes exploiting existing laws to protect their way of life.
Yeah, some would argue it's a violation of the Establishment Clause.
By the way, just in point of fact, I'm okay with gender segregation. I don't have a problem with it at all. In fact, I think it's good in some ways, but I just didn't know that the government could pay for it because I thought the official position of the government at every level was gender segregation is always bad, including in the John.
Yeah.
But no, it's okay when
I guess
the yeshivas do it.
Sure. Because they're a religious organization.
Okay.
Which, different conversation, but religious freedoms in this country, I think, have gone too far or have been weaponized by bad actors.
Yeah, I mean, there seems to be less religious freedom for some people, but a lot more for others.
Yeah. And this is not the only instance of this exact same behavior. The blueprint was made in East Ramapo in Muncie, New York, not too far away. Basically, Orthodox Jews came into this community of mostly black and brown, working class, poor people, bought a bunch of real estate, established their presence, voted themselves into positions of power in the school board, the zoning board, the planning board, the city council. They voted to defund like after school activities for the kids in the public schools, to increase the amount of funding for these yeshivas. And then they would consolidate the public schools that existed, as the funding basically went down and the public student enrollment went down as people left. They would consolidate them, meaning they would close down some of the public schools and they would then sell them off for a discounted price to these yeshivas. So the takeaway from nearby towns.
Wait, and so they actually took over the physical plant of the buildings?
They bought the schools at discounted rates. Yeah. Below market rates, arguably.
In this segment, Tyler Oliveira uses the word blueprint multiple times to describe the growth of the Orthodox Jewish community in towns like Lakewood and Muncie. This word choice is highly intentional. It suggests a calculated, almost conspiratorial plan rather than an organic demographic shift. While Oliveira cites specific actions like the consolidation of school boards and the sale of public buildings, he presents these events with zero nuance or counter-perspective. The criticism here is about the lack of journalistic friction. Tucker Carlson never asks for the other side's justification. For instance, an Orthodox community member might argue that, as taxpayers, they are simply seeking fair allocation for their children's transportation or special education. By framing a demographic move as a takeover or a blueprint, the interview shifts from reporting to narrative building. It leaves the audience with a one-sided view of a complex legal and social battle over how public funds should follow students in a religiously diverse society.
Damn.
It's brutal, right? So the lesson for nearby towns was, we don't really have any upside for these people to move in if, A, the state funding formula is designed in such a way that the quality of our kids and their public education will go down, and they will elect themselves into political power and basically be aggressive and unreasonable neighbors to live by. So, yeah.
It's an amazing story.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So,